get a little bit of a background of the whole sugya with a few angles here that we thought just like getting into the beginning of Baba Basra would be helpful. And I could do it in English, actually. I was prepared to do it in Hebrew, but I think we could do it in English today, right? Unless somebody comes on. Okay, so, I mean, you could, whatever you want, you could mute or unmute, I don't know. You're sure, you decide. So the Mishnah starts.
Anyone can always unmute themselves very easily. Everyone can unmute themselves very easily. Just to stop background noises, it's always better to have others on mute unless they want to.
I see. Okay.
As much as they want
to. Fine. Right. Okay. And if you happen to hear a truck passing by, please, just mention to me. I'll say it over again. Okay. Anyway, so the Mishnah starts off. The Shutfin Shiratzul Lasis Mechitza. The Gemara has two general approaches to this Mishnah. Number one, according to the Lishna Kama, the Shutfim who are mischalik in the Chatzah, which means that they agreed to make a kaisel, they are forced to build a kaisel based on their agreement. And the kaisel has to be built k'minhag HaMedina, whether it's gvil, gazis, whatever the material is. However, if they were not mischayev between them to build it, there is no chiyuv to build a wall because Hezekriya is not Shmei Hezek. That's the first Lishna of the Gemara, the general Mahalach. Shalom Bakatov Moshe. Anglit?
English fine, don't worry.
English is fine? Okay. So according to the Lishna Kama, the basis of the agreement of the Mishnah of the Kaisel is based on the agreement, not because of Hezekriya. And according to the second Lishna of the Gemara, we're talking about, the Gemara, the Maskana is that we're talking about a Chatzah she'ein b'din chalukah, and therefore, only when they both agree to split the Chatzah are they mischayev to split it. And then, based on that agreement as well, once they're splitting the Chatzah, they have to build a Kaisel because of Hezekriya. Hezekriya Shmei Hezek. Those are the two approaches in the Gemara. So, the bottom line is that because of Hezekriya Shmei Hezek, that's mechayev to build a kaisel. The question is, why is Hezekriya? What's the basis of the chiyuv to build a kaisel based on Hezekriya? Hezekriya, if it's a mazik, so prevent the nezek. Why? Where does this come from? The chiyuv to build a kaisel based on the Hezekriya. What's the category here in the Gemara? So for that, simply the way to learn is similar to the Gemara in the second parak. The whole parak, second parak of Baba Basra, Lo Yachbar, deals with Nizkei Shchenim. For example, even in a situation where you don't have a classic mazik, as you would have in Bava Kama, right? In Bava Kama, there's a mazik of Bava Kama, Hagdara of a mazik, which is, you learn out of Psukim, and sometimes it could be Grama, sometimes it could be Garmi, and sometimes it's Adam mazik and Mamam and mazik. So those klalim of mazik of Bava Kama are that you mechuyev, like the Mishnah says, the first Mishnah in Bava Kama, you have a chiyuv to watch your guf, shmiras and alecha, the guf and your mammon, that they shouldn't do nezek. Over here, this is not guf and mammon mazik, pashtas, but it's midin shchenim, hilchas shchenim. There's a chiyuv on the mazik to be marchik himself when he sees that the use of his field or whatever he has is damaging his neighbor. That's the gather of the sugyas of the Gemara in the second parak of Layachbar. Harchokas nizaken. You have to remove the mazik. Now we find this in our Gemara and Amud Beis as well in our sugya, where we see this more clearly. The Gemara says that it's also to build a kaisel, a chatzah, in a way that the bala kaisel can stand up on the chatzah and peer into the bayis, into his neighbor's home, even though the bala kaisel can say, "What do you want from me? I make sure that I won't stand on the wall. I'm not a mazik." Still, the halacha is that he has to build the wall in a way that he cannot eventually do this nezek. So you see here that it's not the regular classic mazik of Bava Kama, but it's a mazik that a person has to be in a situation that he can come to do the nezek next to his neighbors. That's the same by Hezekriya as well. The building of the wall, he is pushing away the possibility of doing Hezekriya. And just in our mission of the Chiddush is that both people, have a joint chiyuv in this, since both people are neighbors with each other, and they both can have this hezek riyah. So therefore, they both have to prevent this, and that's why they both have to market themselves. But the general rule of this Mishnah is that it's harchokas nizaken. That's the simple way to learn our sugya of hezek riyah, and that's why you have to make the wall to prevent the possibility of doing the damage.
Well,
Which is it's a new sugya of mazik.
Rav, what is the hezek though?
Yeah.
What is the hezek? It's not ayin hara by chassid, but you said it by gina.
Okay, you're right. That is a sugya in itself, and we'll get to it maybe next time. But that is a big issue. What is the hezek riyah? What is it doing? I'll just say like a general two ideas that I mentioned in Rishonim and Achronim, which is either the approach is that it's either a nezek of my guf. In other words, I'm making somebody misstire because of my behavior. I'm damaging him. It's like a physical damage, or it's a monetary damage because my presence next to him will prevent him from using his chatzah properly, and that causes him monetary damage. Those are the two possible approaches of the nezek of hezek riyah. But at this point, we're talking about what is the chiyuv to build a kaisel based on this hezek riyah. And now, so if we were to take this approach, that is the idea of the chiyuv to build the kaisel based on the hezek riyah, we can. There's a question here. The Gemara and Daf Zayin of the base. The Gemara discusses Achim Shecholku, two brothers. They had a property that they obviously yarshed it. We can suppose, and now, as a result of the Yerusha, they want to split the property. So they split it in a way that one has a chatzah, one has the bias. Okay, the Gemara says Ein lehem chaloina zelzeh. So there's a machlokes. What does this mean? Ein lehem chaloina zelzeh. The Gemara in Daf Zayin is based up on top. Rashi says that the Bala Chatzah can build the kaisel and blacken out lahachsheches chaloin beisah shalachiv. He can make the ear light blacked and removed from his brother. There's no problem doing that, even though normally when you have two neighbors next to each other, you can't build a kaisel and make his home darker. But in this case, you can. That's what Rashi learns. However, the Rosh brings a different shot from the Ravid, who says that the Bala Chotzer can be teveya from the Baal Habayis to stuff up his window. Why? Because the fact that he has a window looking into my Chotzer is damaging me, and he's mazik me behezek riyah. So I can force him to block up his window. So two opposite pshatim in the Gemara. But the Ramban brings Rashi, and the Ramban says that you see that you can't, according to Rashi, you can't make this teviyah on the house, the balabayas, to block up your window. Why? Because he says, this is the situation this property had the beginning of the chalukah, on the outside of the chalukah. In other words, the father had this, and he was able to use his window. If one of the sons, I yerish the house, so I'm yerish the house with window. Since this is the way the Yerusha was given, he has no right to object for him to look into his home. Right? Lamais, at the end of the day, we have here hezek riyah, but this is hezek riyah that's acceptable. That's what comes out according to Rashi, and then according to Ramban. The way the Ramban learns Rashi, the Ramban argues on Rashi and learns like the Ravid. That the pshat in the Gemara is that the Baal Chatzah could be teveya. That the Baal Chatzah can build a wall and block the light of the window of the home. Now the interesting Rishonim, the Ran over there says at the same spot on that Gemara that even though the Shutfim Shecholku, it's really, the Ran says it's the same exact thing. Not only by sons, but even Shutfim Shecholku. They had this property b'shutfus, and now they split it. One takes the chatzah, one takes the bias. The same thing applies. You can say, look, you can't force me to block up my window so that I can't look into your chatzah, because this is the Tanaim of the Chalukah. Okay? Now, according to these Rishonim, which is really the Ramban, the Ravid, the Rosh, the Ran, all of the Rishonim, we have to understand what's the pshat in our Mishnah. By shutfim, by all shutfim, they're splitting up the property, and now they have a chatzah, you have a chatzah and I have a chatzah. So al daskei nechlaku. This is the chalukah based on the metzias that we had in the beginning. So what's the difference between a bias and a chatzah and a chatzah and a chatzah? So there must be, according to these Rishonim, there must be a different reasoning, a possible different reasoning in the chiyuv to build the kaisel based on the hezek. So that's the other approach we want to look into, which is based on the Gemara on Daf Zayin. The Gemara on Daf Zayin says that we're kaifin to build the Bnei Rishus, the people live in a chatzah. A lot of people live in a chatzah. Each has a bayis betach l'chatzah, and you force all the members in this chatzah to build a base shar for the chatzah. What's the purpose for that? It's to prevent any passerbys from looking in, right, and damaging. That's hezek riyah of Rabbim. Our Gemara and Daf Beis, Amud Beis brings this din as well. And the Gemara asks, you see from there the hezek riyah shmei hezek, and the Gemara says hezek of the Rabbim shiny. But al kol panim, you see here that the Bnei Chatzah can force each other to build a Beis Shar. And the Beis Shar, they hire a shomer over there to make sure nobody does any damage. Okay? So you see that anything that requires fixing up in the Chatzah to make it a working Chatzah, that everybody can have maximum use, is on the responsibility of all the Bnei Chatzah to make sure that the Chatzah functions properly. It's very similar to the din of a chayma. Everybody in the city has to chip in and to build a wall around the city to protect the city. And that's a responsible obligation of any citizen in the city. So similarly, the citizens of a city and the citizens of a chatzah, they also have to be mishtatef in building a wall or building a Beis Shar for the purpose of the chatzah. So that's part of it's called tikkunei chatzah. So if based on that, you can maybe say a different shot of similar to Beis Shar. In other words, the whole din of building a kaisel is because any bnei chatzah who live next to each other and they share areas together, they're next to each other, there's a kilkul in the chatzah which requires them to fix it up. What's the kilkul? Hezek riyah. So the tikkun to this is building the kaisel. What's the difference if the kilkul is because of the bnei rishus rabbim peering in, or it's one another? That's the basis of this mahalach. Okay, so that's another possibility of learning pshat in the din of building the kaisel based on a hezek riyah. The only problem is our sugya says that the din of our Mishnah is totally in the din of hezek riyah, whether it's hezek or not hezek. Now, if it's because of archakas nizaken, so it's clear that it has a direct result of hezek riyah. If hezek riyah is called a hezek, then of course they're mechuyev to build to be marchik the nizik, right? But if it's to marchik the mazik, but if it's midin Beis Shar, so to speak, so what does it have to do with hezek riyah? They all have to fix up the needs of the chatzah. Why is it necessarily totally in hezek riyah shmei hezek? So I just want to. It's pretty obvious to answer to that question, but the Rambam phrases it very nicely. The Rambam says that by Beis Shar itself, in the tikkun of a chatzah and for setting up the shomer to watch the bnei chatzah, that nobody should watch it, look in. The Rambam says, how do we determine what's called tzarchei chatzah, that everybody has to chip in? The Rambam says that it's anything that has a davar gadol, an important. Rambam means anything that's very important for the bnei chatzah, and it's considered of maximum chashivas. So everybody, the bnei ha'ir, have to fix it up and make a chayma and to build a Beis Shar. Not everything goes into that category. So this is where you can say that the issue and the question over here of hezek riyah shmei hezek would then establish what's considered a chashav, a thing that's chashav for the bnei chatzah. So if hezek riyah is considered hezek, so of course it's a davar chashav ma'od to make sure you protect everybody's privacy. They shouldn't get hezek riyah. But if hezek riyah is not considered a hezek, for whatever reasons we can get into eventually of what the category of hezek riyah, but it's not considered an hezek. So that means that it's not considered something which is chashav enough to establish a chiyuv for every person in the Bnei Chatza of the Bnei Chatza. So therefore, you wouldn't have to build a kaisel based on that. So that would be the issue here of hezek riyah, which is not directly hezek riyah shmei hezek, but it would then establish that it's considered a very important tzarech of the Chatzar, and then everybody would be mechuyev to chip in based on that. So now there's an interesting the second parak in the sugya of harchakas nizaken. There's a famous machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and the Chachamim. When you have two neighbors, for example, one wants to plant a tree. The Mishnah says that you have to be marchik the tree from the bur. Let's say my neighbor has a ditch in his chatzar. I have to make sure that I plant the tree 25 amas away from the bur, because the roots will eventually would make holes in the bar, if it's besad besid or not sad besid, but it will make a kilkel in the bar and ruin the person's ability to keep water, to store water in his chatzah. So Rabbi Yossi says that al hanizik la'archek atzmai, right? So Rabbi Yossi says the Mishnahs is Chachamim who say that the person has to be marchik the Elon because he's the mazik. Planting the Elon will do nezek to the bar, so the Baal HaElon has to be marchik 25 amas. That's Chachamim. But Rabbi Yossi holds that al hanizik la'archek atzmai, which means that I don't have to worry. Since I have my property here, I can plant my tree, and since the Baal HaBar is the one who's getting the damage done to him, it's not my problem, it's his problem. He has to make the bar in a situation where it wouldn't prevent me from planting my tree, so he has to put his bar 25 amas away. So the point of this is that the Rimagash over there on that sugya asks a question. He says, we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. Halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, al hanizik la'archek atzmai. So the Rimagash asks in the sugya on Daf Vav, actually, I'll see the Gemara here. A second here. The Gemara here talks about shtei chatzeres zulam ala mizu and gaga samach lachatzer. So the Rimagash asks on the whole din of that you have to build a wall on the whole din of chatzer sheyesh hezek riyah. He says, why are you mechuyev to build a wall? It's the wall is in order to prevent the nezek being done. That sounds like more like Chachamim, but according to Rabbi Yossi, we paskin like him. So why does he need to build the wall to prevent him from doing the damage? Normally, the nizik has to worry about this, since we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. So what do we see here? What do we see from the Rimagash? I mean, why is he asking this on the Gemara over there, not asking on our Mishnah? Our Mishnah. No, the Gemara is talking about a window opposite the other person's rishus, or a gag, which is samach to the chatzah. And he says, why are we worried about the mazik over here? The nizik has to worry about himself being damaged. He should make sure he does his activities in a way that it doesn't get damaged. It's not the mazik's problem. So nizik la'archek atzmai. But why didn't the Rimagash ask this question on our Mishnah itself? I mean, the whole din of two neighbors. And it's based on hezek riyah shmei hezek, as the Gemara says. According to the man of hezek riyah shmei hezek. So why is that a reason to build the wall? That's the question we can ask on the Rimagash. So we see a bit of a hint in this Rimagash showing us that he holds, like those other Rishonim, that the basis of our Mishnah is not Chakas Nizakin. Because if that would be the case, why would he have to remove the wall? Why would he have to build the wall? It shouldn't be his problem.
But Rav Zev, though, but in our Mishnah case, there's no one side being a mazik, one side being a nizik. They both are could look into each other's side. So it's not like,
Very good. Very interesting. Yeah, no, I agree with your point. There is a difference between a case when you have two equal hezekim, each one are doing a nezek to one another. And in that case, it may actually be different than the case of the Gemara later. But I thought of that point as well, a very good point. But in other words, you're saying that perhaps there wouldn't be a din of ala nizak la'achik asatzmai when both of them are nizakin. So let's start from square one. Now we have to just make sure not to do the damage. But I saw there's a Rishon, one of the Rishonim on Bava Basra, it exists in the Shitas HaKanmainim that were printed in the 1970s from Rabbeinu Baruch Meretz Yavan, one of the Rishonim from Greece. He actually asked the same exact question as Rimagash on our Mishnah. He asks that why are we concerned with building this kaisel when the klal is and the halacha is the lanizik la'achik hasatzmai. So he asked that question. So it's we'll leave this room for thought and discussion as to is it actually what's the machlokes between the Rimagash and is there a machlokes between them? Is there a difference between them? Why does he ask on the Mishnah? Why he asks on the Gemara later? Is there a difference? And then perhaps it could be relevant to this discussion. What is the sugya of our Mishnah? According to Rabbeinu Baruch, you see that the issue of our Mishnah is actually Archakas Nizakin because he asked the question. But Rimagash perhaps not. I was just using this as a way to understand the Rimagash's question on the Gemara, not in our Mishnah. You're saying it possibly a different reason. And then that would make it into a different sugya. In other words, the fact that two equal mazikim and nizakin wouldn't have the concept of ala nizik la'achik hasatzmai. Okay, good point, and I will look into it in Mitzvah Shem. And if there's any other points here related, so please feel free to suggest them. And since Yeshua will make sure that we get cut off at 1 o'clock, so I wanted to make sure we finish this.
If they both agree here on, if they both agree, let's say, on not building a wall.
So can you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
If they both agree on not building the wall.
If they both agree on not building the wall?
Yeah. There's no din in the right?
You mean to say if the Michael on the Hezekriya?
Right.
Okay. There is. We'll see in the Gemara. The Gemara discusses whether they can. What's the status of the mechila? If they make a kinyan that to be mevater on the wall, they can do that.
Right. So I'm saying. So obviously, we're talking here in a case that only one of them. One of them cures.
One of them is forcing the other one to build the wall.
Right. So then there is like sort of a music.
Well, that's true, but in other words, each one wants to have the other one participate 50%. So the basis of their teviyah is true. I want you to be mishtatif so that you shouldn't do nezek to me. But since that it's based on their agreement together, perhaps this is what Gabriel is saying. Gabriel, correct me if I'm not saying it properly. Since they're both coming from the same angle, so perhaps we don't have the same concept of anizik la'achik hasatzmai. It's based on Hezekriya. That's the basis of our Mishnah. But they are both the Hezekriya together are doing this. Thank you, Rafal.
It could be that's the argument maybe between the Rimagash and the
Rabbeinu Baruch.
other
Right.
issue because
Okay, so I'll probably stick this into the Marmakaimis business, and if you have anything to add, altogether, if any of them, a lot of the Marmakaimis are just very lengthy because a lot of people don't have all the material and all the Sfarim and whatever. So I just put in extra things. I may box in things that are just like for any extra Eon things. If people want to get into specific things instead of reading the whole thing. Not everybody's interested in it. In the meantime, that's what I'll try to do. And okay, so wish everybody have a good day.
Yeshikach.
Shkayach, everybody. Take care.
Okay.
I guess.